We're currently being canceled, puppy. Do you have anything you want to say about that? Well, I don't really care either, to tell you the truth.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right. So I let you guys see baby girl because I know that if I don't show her every once in a while, people are like, how's the puppy? What's going on with the puppy? The puppy is great. Right now she's having a treat. I apologize to you guys right off the bat. Last week I had technical issues, and really it wasn't even technical issues in my head. Cause I was just like, I don't know. It was one of those days where you're like, I wish I knew what Mercury in retrograde meant because that might have been it. Or maybe it's my Saturn return. These are terms I've picked up along the way. I lived in LA for a long time. I don't really know what they mean. But I know that during those times, a lot of times your technology will be off and things just kind of go haywire for you. And I was having, I wouldn't say like like I told you guys, this like Bijou Tuesday that just passed is the anniversary of me having to send my puppy to heaven. So I was off from that. But I don't know what it was that had me so off because when you upload a video to YouTube, you have the option and it's just a click of a button, a button, so digital. But it's just a click of a button and you can put that you either want to premiere it or you just want to let it post at a scheduled time. Because I pretty much always schedule. It's very rare that I just post right away. Usually I schedule it for at least an hour or two away. And so I didn't click that button though, and I didn't realize it. And we were getting to the time that it should be the countdown, like a minute before. And I was like messing with it and I was logging in and logging out. And I was like, why is this not coming up as a premiere? Because usually it'll show up on my channel as like, the same way it shows up on your guys's, except for it's on my end. But it like lets you know that the premiere is coming up. So I was waiting for the premiere and the countdown didn't start. So then all of a sudden my video goes live and I was like, okay, so I did upload it correctly. But for some reason, and what I had done was just scheduled it and not. And by the time somebody had suggested, which I'm always open to your guys' suggestions, and sometimes you guys really do know what you're talking about, or you'll help me out. Like sometimes it's technical stuff, sometimes it's just stuff I forget. Like last week, I mentioned that there was a mall on Maryland Parkway in Las Vegas that I was trying to remember the name of, and then one of you commented it was Boulevard Mall, and that's exactly the mall I was talking about. Which, of course, you know that because on Maryland Parkway, I think unless you go all the way north, that's the only mall you're gonna find on Maryland Parkway. And I don't even think it's a mall when you go super far north. I think it's a movie theater that I went to that's just like Maryland Parkway and past all that stuff that's like past downtown, past Fremont area that because Maryland and Fremont, as far as the Fremont experience, don't connect. But anyway, neither here nor there. What I was trying to say is that somebody had suggested that I go ahead and re-upload it, but that, like, the upload process, depending on the length of the video, which this is probably more inside baseball than any of you need to know, and if you upload videos you already know this, but sometimes it can take 20 to 30 minutes, and especially with my stuff, because sometimes YouTube will have to kick my stuff back because my language will be a little too spicy, or sometimes my topics are a little bit too spicy. And so I think my check system runs a little bit slower, but I'm willing to take the risk and I'm going to continue to like push the envelope, because I don't try to push the envelope in a way where I'm not ever trying to think like, oh, I'm going to be naughty or go against YouTube's terms of service. That's not the way I work. That's not the way I'm doing this platform. And I I talked about it a couple of days ago when Howard Stern show was getting canceled. Because if you guys didn't see, Howard Stern show is being canceled off Sirius XM because they were paying him $100 million a year, I believe it was, and they decided that he just wasn't worth the investment anymore. And I used to be a hardcore Howard Stern listener. I loved Howard Stern when I was younger and before he went to Sirius XM. And I had tweeted something like this because everybody's talking about how terrible it was because Howard Stern had turned into like an SJW. For anybody that's not familiar, social justice warrior, person that's always trying to be politically correct, that kind of thing. So Howard Stern, so a lot of people were kind of dancing on the grave of Howard's career or his career in radio, which he's, I think, worth $600 million is what I read, something like that. So he'll be fine. It's like people have these victories, and I get it if you're happy that somebody's off the air because you didn't like them or you thought they were toxic or whatever. But sometimes people act like this is going to be the end of somebody, and it's like $600 million, there is no end. Until God says there's an end, there's no end when you have $600 million. It's just like, okay, so I don't have to show up to work anymore, which I'm sure Howard Stern loves doing radio, but if he wants to, he can also just do his own podcast, and he can hire a crew with $600 million, even if the estimates are wrong, because I have friends that have been on the Celebrity Net Worth and they tell me outright, yeah, they have me as having this amount of money. I do not have that amount of money. And it's always less. Anytime anybody has ever told me that, it's always been less than the estimated amount because everybody's going off of estimates. But it goes to a certain point, and there are a lot of people that think that too. Like there are a lot of regular people that think that too, that everybody's worth so much more money than they are getting. Like somebody said on one of my videos not too long ago that I was getting paid by the right wing, and by like right wing politics was paying me. I was on some sort of payroll, and it's like, I wish. And I'll tell you guys honestly, if they give me money, I'll say whatever they want me to say. I'll do sponsored ads for them. I don't care. Which, I joke that way, but I do have definitely my standards and my morals and stuff like that. But I think people will say that about people like me when I just say something that they don't agree with. And I think it's also like kind of a sign of their disappointment, is rather than just accept that maybe we think differently on a particular topic, which in a lot of cases would make sense because my life experience, and I'm not saying this for good or bad, it's just a different perspective, but my life experience has made it so I look at things in a different way. And I think people forget that. Like, we all have different perspectives because of the way that we've been raised or what we've seen throughout our life. I was going to say what we've seen growing up, but at a point it's no longer just about how you grew up, because there are a lot of things that I've seen that my family didn't show me, that wasn't a part of my upbringing and probably never would have been a part of my life experience if I had been more of a, like a local guy, like just raised with my family and stayed in Arizona and not really circulated the way I have. But at this point, I've lived in Los Angeles, Las Vegas a couple of times, Austin, and Arizona, obviously. And so I've seen a lot of different kinds of life. And so sometimes if you end up disagreeing with me, which I'm fine with people disagreeing with me, I don't know where anybody gets this idea that we're all supposed to think the same. And I don't know where people get the idea that it's a bad thing when people think differently than you do, or when people, I wouldn't even say correct you, because I don't have a lot of people. There are the people in my comments every once in a while that are condescending and try to correct me in a way like they know something. But especially when it comes to my podcast, which that's what this is, if anybody's not familiar. But when it comes to my podcast, it really is just kind of my life and opinions. Like when I do the videos that I do throughout the week, I really do more research than I should in some cases. And sometimes videos will take extra long because I end up going down a rabbit hole, which I've talked about before. I think I talked about it just last week. Sometimes I do probably too much research, but I do want to be factually correct on those. But with this, the reason that I'm able to just flow when I speak is because I'm not really thinking about accuracy as far as, because this is all opinions and it's just kind of my life, you know. So when people come at me hard on my podcast in the comments, I'm like, okay, well, you can't tell me what my life experience is or what I've noticed. And obviously with the weekly videos or the videos throughout the week, I also pepper in plenty of my own opinion and give a little bit of advice to whatever celebrity or TikTok user that I'm responding to or using as my response video. But you know, with my podcast, it really is like a conversation, and that's why I regret that I didn't actually click the button, because that's one of the things that I like the most is when I'm in the chat and we're able to go back and forth, and you guys are in real time responding to me as we're watching together. And obviously, I watch the episode, well, not watch the episode, because what I do with these also, since they're unedited, is I don't at all review them before I post them. Like once in a while, if I have like a major hiccup, you know, which I've even shown when my tripod or my ring light has fallen forward and I was like, damn it. And I was, but if there's anything that's ever like a serious curse word, like I know YouTube doesn't like it, like there's certain combos that YouTube does not like. Like if you say effing see you next Tuesday, that word combination will get your video demonetized. And if a video gets demonetized, sometimes that'll make it so your stuff is kind of suppressed for a little while there. And I understand the way that all that works. And so, like I said, I'm not one of those guys that's really trying to buck the system on YouTube. That's not what my thing is. What I feel is most important is as long as I'm able to convey to you guys what it is I'm trying to say and you guys get it, then I'd rather have the conversation however it has to be altered than not have the conversation altogether, which is something people have gotten mad at me for when I will use the gender expression that whatever person uses that I'm watching the video of. Like, so if I'm watching Dylan Mulvaney, and I know that that bothers people, even though I don't care about pronouns, and I will keep that in mind. And you can always tell when I am personally in protest, because you'll notice that I'll just keep saying the person's name over and over rather than using a pronoun. Because for me, since I've had trans friends for so long, and I know what a lot of you are like a lot of you, I really, in a sense, especially with the podcast, I really have found my tribe in a lot of you, because a lot of you, even though you may not agree with me, you can at least see why I say things the way that I say them. And a lot of people do tend to agree with me on being live and let live type. And since I've had trans friends for so long, it doesn't bother me to refer to people as she and her. But if it's like a Lily Tino and I'm not really buying it, then I'll just keep saying Lily Tino's name rather than actually use the gender. Also, because with Lily Tino, if I were to do what's natural for me in conversation, I would just say he the whole time, because I don't buy it at all. I don't believe that Lily Tino is actually trans. Same with Dylan Mulvaney. I believe Dylan Mulvaney, even though in the video I did about him over the week, you know, I did like I know that in that video Dylan says that they're not a feminine man, but in my world that's really what Dylan Mulvaney is. So it's hard for me not to say he when I'm referring to Dylan Mulvaney, because the way that I see Dylan is as just a twink that likes to dress in women's clothing. And so And sometimes, which I'll end up talking about this on a video coming up, like, because it's a topic that I want to go into, or it intersects with the topic that I want to go into. But different channels can also get away with different things. And I don't think that that's anything to do with race or anything silly like that. I think LGBT, they're naturally, especially ears perked when it comes to LGBT, because we there's a lot of landmines, especially for a corporation like Google. There's a lot that can go wrong when people are talking about LGBT stuff. And now things are starting to loosen up. But for a minute there, you guys all remember what it was like when it was super PC and everybody was really on their toes as far as trying to mind the way they referred to people gender wise, and respecting pronouns, all that stuff. And so now Google is starting to loosen up on that, or YouTube more specifically is starting to loosen up on that. And I really wish they would just let us go at it. And I understand there's certain things they have to watch out for as far as curse words and being too heavy on the profanity. I naturally try to watch that a lot too. It's not like I'll never curse. Obviously, if you watch my channel, you know I do. And sometimes I get a little spicy. But really, I try to watch that as much as I can, because I realize that some people could be watching me at work. And I also know that some people also want to introduce my stuff to other people. And so if I'm a complete potty mouth the entire time, plus the older I get, like with comedy, when I do stand up, I love being like crazy and just speaking as freely as I want to. But the truth is, the older I get, the less I curse. And I don't know why that. Maybe I just feel like it's not as necessary, or maybe I've just learned to articulate myself, in better ways, or I don't know. But also with cursing, rather than cursing, which this is something I've always known from stand up ever since, because I used to do clean stand up in certain shows. And, you can basically make your words say what you want them to say by just changing tone and inflection. You can imply the F word without actually saying it. It doesn't mean I don't still love every once in a while a good cuss word combination, but maybe I'm just a little all or nothing in it, where it's like, if I'm going to make a YouTube video and I'm going to watch what I say, then it's probably better if I just all the way around watch what I say, instead of trying to be like selective in my cursing, if that makes sense, And what I was saying about Howard Stern, though, is when people were talking about the fact that Howard Stern was, like had gone bad, or however you would want to say that. The thing for me was, I hadn't listened to Howard since he went to Sirius XM. And a couple of times I did tune in since he's been on Sirius XM. But I realized that once they were allowed to curse, and once they were allowed to be dirty and basically do whatever they wanted to do, it made it so it wasn't as fun, because that was part of the fun of the original show when he was on terrestrial radio, was they used to come up with all sorts of weird and silly ways to say things like boobs, or like, different ways to say things so that they could get around the censors. And it made them come up with some really creative stuff, where when they were just allowed to curse and they no longer needed to do that, they didn't take the time to really be creative that way. And so that was a part of why. And then when people said that Howard had become too mainstream, and suddenly now every big celebrity wanted to be on his show or interviewed by him, respect to Howard for getting to that point in his career, because for a long time he was seen as a pariah. And, Donald Trump used to call in regularly, and there were different characters that we all knew if you were Howard's, like the Whack Pack. And there were just different characters, Debbie the, Debbie the Queefer, I think was her name. Bridget the Midget, like there were Beetlejuice. There were just so many characters, Ronnie the limo driver. But all of these characters Howard had to pull because otherwise he wouldn't have had any guest or anybody to talk to. Buck Angel was even on Howard Stern at a point. But they weren't allowed, like, not being allowed to say certain things and not having access to major celebrities was a part of what made Howard so great back when most of us fell in love with the Howard Stern show. And so, like I said, it was good that he got to have that part of his career where he was able to have the major celebrities. And I think he deserved that. And I think Robin deserved that for them being on so long and fighting the machine. But once Howard started being so like, you shouldn't say this and people shouldn't say that, and it was like that wasn't the guy you were at all. You were the opposite guy. You were the guy that hated being told what you couldn't say, but you made it work for you anyway. And so once he lost that, then it was like everything that was good about Howard Stern for a person like me was gone, because he was no longer working around, which is ironic because it's kind of like it was him, or is him, finally able to say everything exactly the way he wants to say them. And I guess maybe sometimes censors will protect you from yourself because you might not be that likable when you don't have any restraints. It's ridiculous, but I think I might have just figured out what my conundrum was with the Howard Stern situation. I never liked him all along. It was the censors that were keeping me thinking I liked him. But I also did mention that I have like that they were trying to cancel my show. And when I say they, it's a particular comedian, and I'm not even being catty when I do the comedian. It's just this person I don't think does stand up anymore, and even when I knew them, they weren't particularly active in stand up. And I don't shout them out only because nobody would know their name, so it's not like a situation where it's like, oh, there'll be this thing, it's like nobody knows this person, and there's no reason for anybody to even look them up because they're so inactive and also just truly negative. Because here's the thing with me and this person, because what happened is, if you guys don't know, I'm doing a show here in Phoenix. I guess I can plug it. August 16th, I'm doing a show in Phoenix, right? And so what's going on is the owner of the club calls me, and I thought he was calling me to talk because, I had gone in on Sunday because I wanted to like look at the venue because I hadn't actually seen it. And there's this guy that I'm working with that's setting this stuff up for me, and he's in charge of that part. But I hadn't actually seen the venue. And so I went down there to actually look at the venue. And the next day, no, 2 days later, the owner calls me, and I thought he was just calling me to talk about something to do with the venue, or maybe something to do with staff. You never know what people are going to talk to you about in these situations, but I thought that that's what our conversation was going to be. And then he ends up telling me, he was like, oh, just so you know, it's not a problem or anything, but there's somebody that's trying to get your show canceled right now. And I was like, really? And so he was like, yeah. And he was like, do you know a person by the name of, and the person has a hard to pronounce last name. And so, well, I should say the spelling of it looks weird once you hear that, but it also doesn't sound at all like it looks on paper. It's like a weird last name. But I was like, wow, what would that person even be? Because when he said somebody was trying to get my show canceled, I was like, that doesn't make sense at all, because really I haven't done anything what you could call controversial lately. And I've just kind of been talking about stuff that is, for me, very like kind of middle of the road, like current events, immigration. Everybody's talking about immigration, like on the news and stuff like that. LGBT, everybody's talking about LGBT. Carmelo Anthony, like a lot of the stuff I talk about is basically hot topics. And so I didn't, at first, had no idea who would be doing that. And then he told me the name, And then I was like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah, I know that person, but I can't believe that they're even still thinking about me because I haven't seen this person. No exaggeration. 6 years. I have not seen this person. They tried to contact me and troll me a couple of times on direct message, and I can't remember if it was Instagram or Facebook. And I ended up just blocking them. And it wasn't even from their actual account, and I ended up figuring out it was them. That's the way that went down. And then somebody else told me that they had had a similar interaction with that person. And then I asked them, because we were figuring out that if it was both of us that they were coming after, then there was a good chance that that was who that person was. I wish I could remember who the other, because I would tell you who the other comedian was. But I can't remember right now. If it pops in my head, I will tell you guys. See, because that's like the gossip. That's the fun part. But the other comedian obviously is a friend of mine. And so we had put it together where if this person was harassing both of us, then it definitely was that person, like using a burner account. And so, but that's the last interaction I had with them. And that was maybe 2 years ago. But it was them just trying to attack me because these people, and I'm not at all a victim. So don't think of me as like, when I say the words I'm using right now, take them with a grain of salt as far as like using the term victim and stuff like that. Everything I'm saying is just, this is the way, like I said, you're my friends. You guys are Pamela. A lot of you are Pamela Anderson. Excuse me. This is the problem with the No Edits podcast. That's all, folks. A lot of you are Pam Anderson fans too. Some of you reminded me about Stacked and some other things that I hadn't even thought of in the moment, but I definitely remember because I'm a true Pamela Anderson fan. But what I'm getting at is you guys get me. You know how it goes. And so when I say these ridiculous terms like victim and stuff like that, grain of salt. But it's like, or attack is another one because it's like verbally, who cares? I mean, like, for me, it's just dumb and annoying that these people will come after me in this way when it's like, I'm not thinking about you and I don't know why you're still mad at me, because what I was trying to get at is I haven't seen this person, laid eyes on them in 6 years since we've been in the same venue. And we weren't even in a venue. We were at a backyard for a show that used to happen in Phoenix. And it was called, I can't remember, but it was a fun show. Everybody used to like doing that show. My friend Nathan Evangelista used to, that was at his place. But it was a backyard boogie, but that wasn't what it was called. But it was a fun show. And I saw him there one night, and it was after he had kind of let everybody know he hated me and tried to maybe harass me in some way online. But when I saw him, I didn't want to, because I do pride myself on being professional. And also, and even if it's a backyard show, because this show, even though it was backyard and it was fun, they did actually treat it like a show. There was a sound system, there was music playing before the show. Almost everybody would sit down and actually pay attention. And so I didn't want to be that guy that's having some sort of Jerry Springer moment because somebody had said something to me online a couple weeks before, or however long it was before. Because this person has a lot to say about me. But if somebody wants to approach me, then I feel like I can say whatever I want to say. But this person did not choose to approach me in any way. So, like, in my head, there was a little bit of, this person has a lot to say about me online, But then when they see me in real life, suddenly they go radio silent. Suddenly they want to stay on the other side of the yard and make sure, it sounds like I'm talking about prison, and make sure that I don't have any access to them, or I can't even be close to them, which I wouldn't have an interest in being close to them anyway. And like I said, I had no intentions of telling them anything, even though there was a part of me in my head that felt like walking up and being like to talk shit online, huh? But I didn't really want to do that. It's just fun sometimes in my head to be like, if I were to walk up and just let this person know. So like I said, that was 6 years ago. When I pissed them off was actually 10 years ago. And around 10 years ago, of course, I'm estimating right now, guessing, but it had to be around 10 years ago because it was when I was still in LA and I was either hosting as like a guest host, or maybe it was when I was still the host of the Liquid Zoo, which is a dive bar on Sepulveda and Van Nuys, which is in Van Nuys if you guys aren't familiar, or if you guys are familiar with LA at all. But it's on the corner of Sepulveda and Van Nuys. And it's right next to the Chevron if you guys are familiar. But it's this little bar called the Liquid Zoo that used to be like a pimp and hoe type spot. Literally, that's what it was. Like the pimps would be in there when when I first started doing it there. My friend Gail, who every once in a while you'll see in my comments, Gail rocks. She has a YouTube channel. I wish I could remember the name of it. Next week I'll shout it out, but I just can't remember it right now. But my friend Gail was the bartender there, and we became friends through stand-up. And so at a point she asked me if I wanted to host, and so I used to host the open mic at the Liquid Zoo. And so one time this particular comic was having a roast for himself, which these roast people would put on were kind of ridiculous when it's like you're having a roast for your birthday, but really nobody knows you. And I guess if it's for your friends, cool. Like sometimes I know people will do that for their birthdays and stuff. So I get it. But at the same time, we're at an open mic. And I'm going to introduce you for an open mic, which if you guys aren't familiar with the way open mics work, usually even if you've done stuff like big stuff and you perform a lot of places, you don't get an actual intro at an open mic. Usually they just call names, this person, next comedian, you'll say something just to keep it like a show where it'll be like, oh, this guy, I love him. I think he's so hilarious. Give it up for so-and-so, or this, like, I would give ridiculous intros with people because I knew almost all of the LA comics, especially at that time. And so, and with the other thing with LA open mics is you will have people that have TV credits. Like that's what I always tell people about LA when people would tell me that they wanted to move there or they were thinking about moving there. And it's like, if you're an established comic and you're living in another city and you're doing well there and you're thriving there and you're able to do everything that you need to do from that city, I don't really know why you would move to LA, because once you move to LA, you're going to be at the bottom of the list unless you're either famous or you're connected to somebody very famous. And even the connected to somebody very famous isn't always going to help you out. And so, but unless it's one of those two things, you're going to be at the bottom of the list. And you can tell any host anything you want, and it might get you special treatment one time, but after that, you're just another one of the comics. Because I've seen it happen before, and I even had to tell people that when I was at the Liquid Zoo, because sometimes people would come in that were road comedians that maybe had a TV credit, and in their town, that meant that they were top of the line. They were able to kind of look down on everybody. The world was their oyster, and I get that. But when you're in an LA open mic and you come to me as the host, and I already at that point had done plenty of stuff, and you're trying to be like, yeah, can I go up early? And you're like, okay, well, it's a sign up, go up, Mike. And it's like, yeah, but I've been on Letterman. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, he's been on Letterman. He's also been on Fallon. He's also been on Comedy Central. He has a 30-minute presents, so. And that's like, and you can point to several people. That person's been to Craig Ferguson. That person's been on Craig Ferguson. This person has been on the reboot of Arsenio. This person is. So it's like nothing makes you special in LA unless, like I said, like if you're obviously Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, Joe Rogan, like a lot of these people obviously are going to get special treatment no matter where they go in LA. But for a lot of it, it's like, yeah, you're just another one of the comedians. Like a lot of people have the same credits because everybody was working the same circuit, doing the same thing, And so, but my point is, you don't usually get an intro. And like, if you ever see me at an open mic in any city and they gave me an intro, that's because the host of the show or the owner of the club or bar wanted a little bit of pizzazz and one, because like if you see me at an open mic, I don't give them credits, and I just want to be announced like everybody else because I'm at an open mic to work on new stuff. I'm not there to be professional comedian Thai Rivera. I'm there to be open mic. I'm working out this set comedian Thai Rivera. That's what I'm trying to be. So just announce me as Thai Rivera. But we just don't give each other intros at open mics. But this guy walks up to me, and I didn't know him from anybody, so I didn't even see it. Like, this is how not an issue this was for me. I hadn't known he was having a roast for his birthday. I knew nothing about him except for I think I had seen him one time before at another show or open mic. Because that's the other thing with LA is there's a lot of shows and open mics. So they kind of all bleed together. And you're like, was that a show or a mic where I met that person? But I had met him. And I obviously, like I said, had nothing against him. It was whatever, And so he was like, can you intro me with my roast as like promoting my roast? And so I was like, okay, cool. And so he gave me the list, because this is the other thing. This is where I did start to get a little like, this guy's really trying to work me right now. Because instead of just like, fine, give me the venue and the day of your roast, and I'll say that before I give your name. Instead, he was like, let them know that this person is going to be there, that person is going to be there. And it wasn't anybody famous. It wasn't anybody would know. I mean, like, I didn't even know the names. And I, like I said, know a lot of LA comics. So I had no idea who these people were. And there was one particular name that I was familiar with. And so, like I said, at that point, I did feel like he was trying me a little bit. But at the same time, I was like, I'm going to have fun with this anyway, because that's what I do at this open mic. It was called the Liquid Zoo. I told you the kind of atmosphere it was. It was a dive bar. I used to refer to myself as a zookeeper. Every once in a while, I would at that time get into arguments with people when I was on stage. And I ran it like what it was. It was a dive bar open mic, and you could come and you could have a good time, but it was going to be wild. And one time we had this guy come in that was off his rocker and wasn't anything to do with the comedians, and really was trying to like, I don't know what this guy was trying to do. He was basically trying to fight everybody. Neither here nor there, but just sets up the atmosphere for you guys. So I go ahead and say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, this next comedian has a roast coming up, and he's going to be doing it for his birthday. It's on this particular date. He's having this person, and this person. And then I was like, wow, sounds like a real who's that of comedy. All the comedians started laughing. I handed the mic off to him. And when I said that, I was just truly being a comedian and having fun. It's a roast. I said something roasty on the intro. And I know any other comedian that had a sense of humor and was actually funny would have had fun with that. I have done so many silly things like that and had people do so many silly things like that with me. One time, a guy introduced me as the gayest homo ever. And this was in an actual show, but I was friends with him. And even he was like, I don't know why I said that. But he literally, that was my intro. He was like, okay. Like I said, it was an actual show. It was like, it really did catch me off guard. But, I also knew he wasn't doing it to be hateful or rude or like demean me in any way. You could tell when he said it, it was like a brain fart moment. And maybe he thought in his head it was going to be funnier than it was, but it was just a terrible intro. And it was at this small bar in Hollywood, but it was like there were people there. It was an actual audience. And I rolled with it. I just was like, the gayest homo ever? Was that really my intro? And the audience absolutely lost it. And I bagged on him in a very fun way for the first maybe minute or two of my set. And then I moved on and did material and had a really great set with them. And I just ran with the energy. And afterwards, he apologized to me. But I was like, yeah, there's nothing to apologize for. We had a great time. It was silly. It was whatever. Don't make that in my intro again if you have me do anything else. His name was Bill, Bill Prather. And and so like for me, that's part of being a comedian, especially at an open mic, because it wasn't like I embarrassed him in front of some audience or I roasted him in front of some audience. It's all other open mic comedians and comedians that are working on new material. So it's not like I humiliated him. And I didn't think anything of it. He did his set. And then, what was it? And then I saw him at another show. And like I said, since I didn't consider it to be at all a point of contention, I didn't feel anything about it. I remember I laughed at a joke that he did. I can't remember what it was. Overall, he's not a very funny guy, but I do remember that there was one legitimate laugh. Oh, it was when Supergirl was coming out on UPN or WB, and then he said something about, I don't remember how the joke went, so I'm not even going to try to do it. But he did say Supergirl, and then he was like, I'll have the soup. And I love silly jokes like that, so I really laughed at his Supergirl joke. And so I laughed at his joke and I just figured we were cool. And then I ended up finding out later that he was holding a grudge because I had made that joke about his roast. And then there was a point when I was in Phoenix and he was saying some stuff like to try to argue with me online. But he was saying like, you're this kind of person and you're racist and you're whatever else, which is what he was telling the club owner, the venue owner. He was telling them that I was like hardcore MAGA and which, I am MAGA, so that's true. But also Arizona isn't like that where, LA people really worry about that. In Arizona, there's so many people in Arizona that are either Trump supporters or conservative or, even there's plenty of Christians here that really do identify as Christians. They have opinions that you shouldn't have or you wouldn't talk about having if you were in a place like LA or San Francisco. But like this guy doesn't realize that in itself is not a reason to cancel a show. The fact that a person voted for Trump or is a MAGA supporter is not a reason to cancel a show in Arizona. Like it's like Arizona, because I was in Austin the whole time that the Tesla thing was happening, when people were vandalizing Teslas in order to make their point. And I had asked my family about that, and they were like, yeah, that's not happening here. It's like the climate in Arizona is different. And so when you say that I'm MAGA, that's not going to get a show canceled. If you say that I'm anti trans, one, that's not true. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community that considers myself to be more of a member than the trans community than I really have been traditionally of the LGBTQ community. And it's not because I'm trans, but it's because that's who I spent a lot of time with coming up. Like, yeah, am I a gay man? Do I have actual gay friends? Yes, I do. Have I been in relationships with gay men? Yes, of course. So my experience personally is I am a gay man, but at the same time, I've spent so much time with trans people, like actual transsexuals, not this new school version of trans, that I'm being critical of my own community. And especially if you really do believe in the acronym LGBTQ, which I vacillate, and I understand why some people don't want to be LGBTQ anymore and want to be LGB minus the TQ. And I'll let other people like decide how that's all going to work out. I know who I'm friends with. I know what I'm doing. That's all I know. That's all I need to care about. But when you're trying to tell a venue owner that I'm anti-trans, and again, we're in Arizona, which is only going to matter so much in the way that nobody is really going to care. I mean, like that as an issue is not really a thing here. Like people in Arizona are just like, yeah, some people are. Some people don't agree with a lot of what the trans community is doing. So if you were to cancel performers and shows because of the way people voted or their religious views or their stance on LGBT, you'd basically just be canceling shows. And it would surprise people that, you know, in Arizona, there's a lot of Latinos that also voted for Trump. But it's not even a factor, to tell you the truth, because I don't talk about that during my set, and not for any other reason than I don't think people go out to comedy shows for that. I don't think anybody's looking for me to have a political rally. And I don't think everybody that watches me here on YouTube agrees with me on the way that I voted, or voted the way that I voted, I should say. Like, I don't feel like that's at all what I'm trying to foster. And I can tell you from my own mouth, it does not take that to be friends with me in real life or online. I don't need people to have voted the way that I voted. If you voted for Kamala, if you voted for any independent, whoever you voted for, I do not see that as you trying to destroy the country or you trying to do anything that's detrimental to the country. I see that as you saw the things that most reflect your point of view in a particular candidate, and that's the way you voted. And like with me, when it comes to voting for Trump, like there's one, the fact that I do think he's entertaining and I think he's fun. And so there's that, which I know some people get like, you should never pick a president. Look, I'm going to be entertained. I don't care who you are or what you're doing. You got to entertain me on some level. And to tell you the truth, back in 2016, the only person that I thought had a chance of really beating Trump was Bernie. And when I saw the way that the DNC did him, I couldn't help but feel like the Democrats weren't being fair with their own people, because if that's who your people want you to go with, and if you remember, Bernie had a lot of buzz and people were really like fired up about him. There was, the actual Bernie Bros, and it was like an actual thing. And I think Bernie really could have given Trump a run for his money. Do I think that Bernie would have won in the end? On quite possibly. On yeah, I think he could have really given him anything could have happened if the Democrats had allowed Bernie to actually do his thing. I knew who I was voting for. That wasn't going to change. But as far as the general public, I think Bernie, and now I don't think Bernie would have a snowball's chance in hell, to tell you the truth, if he were to try to run. I just don't think. I think his moment has passed as far as him having a shot at being the president. But so for me, I don't require any of that, and I don't try to, I'll let it be known what my opinion is when I'm talking about those kinds of things, but I don't try to push anybody in any kind of direction, and I also don't, like I said, expect anybody to, everybody has this idea. This is one of the reasons that I don't really talk about politics, especially at a show, and it's because everybody has this idea that people are doing things to screw other people over. You hear it all the time. You voted for Donald Trump because you hate immigrants. You voted for Donald Trump because you want to see women lose their rights. You want to see trans people lose their rights. You don't care. And it's no, actually, it was none of that. It was none of that at all. The thing that people don't get about me is I live my life in a way that there is really no consequence to anything I say. People can get mad at things I say. People can disagree with me about things I say, but there's really no consequence to anything I say, in the way that what's anybody going to do? Get mad at me? What? You think I've never had anybody get mad at me before? How does that even work in your life? And getting back to the guy that I'm talking about, how are you still mad about something that happened 10 years ago, and then 6 years ago you flared it up again because you wanted to, and then maybe 2 years ago you came at it again because you wanted to, this time from a burner account? And it's how many ways do you want to upset yourself about people that are not thinking about you? Because had this person not contacted the venue, I could have gone the rest of my life without thinking about this person, unless somebody had just brought them up, which I don't know anybody that would bring them up, because nobody that I hang out with or talk to actually knows this person. So, I mean, but what I was trying to get back to, what I was saying is, I just don't at all live in a way where I think that people are trying to screw me over. And when it comes to why I voted the way that I voted, LGBT has gotten carried away. That was a part of it. And I feel like if the trans activists were really to have free reign and their way, and that continued down the path that was going on, it was going to be more destructive for the LGBT community than anything that any outside force could do. I felt like we, as a community, if you want to call us that, we're on a road to self-destruction. And that is just me being 100% honest. When it comes to immigration, like I've told you guys, I've seen the way that immigrants get taken advantage of. I've seen the way that immigrants really do get long-term screwed. And one thing I hope will come from this, and I wish that the Democrats, see, that's where the Democrats aren't doing their job for me, in the way that I wish they would force, instead of going after these single cases, which I'm not going to say there haven't been important ones, like that Andre Rodriguez, Andre, whatever his name was, that's the Venezuela guy. I was going to do a video about him, but he got sent back to Venezuela. But at first, he's the gay hairdresser that, because of his tattoos, at first got sent to El Salvador, and then he ended up back in Venezuela, which I mentioned him in passing before, and he's one that I really was hoping that would get back to Venezuela and I wish he had never gone to El Salvador. Unfortunately, when you're moving at that pace, there's going to be mistakes, which some people feel ways about that, and I respect that too. But so like there were certain singular cases, I guess, that you could go after, and I'm sure there still are. But I wish what the Democrats would really push for and really put pressure on is like, let's figure out some sort of immigration reform and maybe a path to citizenship for people that maybe do certain things for us. And that's where I wish there would be a little more give between the two. And I think Donald Trump would actually offer that, like when he said that as far as the workers on farms went and the hotel people and stuff like that. When people get like, oh, that's just him helping his friends. I don't care why anybody's doing anything, to tell you the truth. As long as it has the effect that I want it to have, as long as we all can benefit from it or other people can benefit from it, I don't care about that. I'm not trying to just make sure that billionaires are screwed or hotel owners or people that have over a certain amount of money. I don't care about that. That's always going to exist, like as far as people getting favors done for them or people having more money than other people. You know what the answer to that is making more money, is figuring out how to elevate yourself. And then if you're really busy doing that, even if you don't get exactly where you want to get or you don't feel like you're exactly where you want to be, at least you're working and in the process of elevating yourself. And so what if you die in the process? Like, I'm not saying like that, but like, say you work your whole life trying to get somewhere, and at a point it's over, your number's up. At least the whole time you were upwardly mobile because you were trying, you were putting time into yourself, But a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to sit and complain about other people and who has this and who has that. And it's like, if you're saying that you do feel like we should have a heart towards immigrants and that there should be some sort of pathway, and then Donald Trump says, like, that there are farms that are going to go under, or there's hotels that would be extremely negatively affected, or sorry, my wording, obviously I'm just really stream of conscious right now. But if there are certain industries where we do need people, which is something I've always said, that the immigration problem is really a staffing situation, and that's the way we need to look at it as a country, and that's the way other countries look at it too. It's like, what can you do for us? Do we actually need you? If we need you, then yeah, I can see how you could possibly earn your way into actually being part of the country. Some people can just get on visas. Not everybody that's forced to live here even wants to live here. And I don't mean forced to live here, but the situation is bad enough where they're from that they feel like they're forced to live here. Some of those people would rather live in their home countries. And some of those people, if they were to make enough money, would be fine to go back to their own countries. And some people would be fine to live here seasonally and come in and out as they needed to work. That's the truth of the immigration situation and the way that immigrants look at a lot of this stuff. Not everybody really wants to be in the United States. It just makes more sense if you're going to come here illegally just to stay here rather than pay a coyote, which I didn't know some coyotes are charging people up to $10,000, which back in my day, when I came here in the trunk of that car, just playing, don't start that rumor because somebody will have my ass deported tomorrow. But no, but it was like, the last I had heard, it was like 1,500. I think 2,500 I heard at one point, and I was like, 2,500? Those prices are going up. Is Trump putting tariffs on these illegals or what? But yeah, I heard about a $10,000 one. So obviously, if you're going to get snuck into the country at $10,000, you're not going to leave at the end of the season and then get snuck in for another $10,000. But so some people would just be here seasonally if they could work at a farm for that particular season, do some stuff, make some money. I knew people that used to do that up north with the cannabis situation, where they would work in Mendocino County, I think it was, and they would be there for the season. I don't remember what the season was or how long it was. And some of them, like a friend of mine, her husband does that, and he makes a lot of money and also gets a lot of product just for him. They just give it to him, and with him, he doesn't secondhand sell it or anything. It's for his own use. You know, he enjoys it. And so he keeps it for himself. He brought me some stuff one time. It was good. but, but yeah, so he does that there where he doesn't want to live in Mendocino County, but he goes up there for a couple months. He works, he makes a lot of money. He comes back down to LA, and then, you know, he's back to his life again. And I think that a lot more immigrants would do that too if they had like a streamlined and actually easy to navigate process for using, you know, temporary visas and stuff like that. But when it comes to certain people, I don't see why certain people can't be a part of this country. You know, if we've needed them or we do need them and they've shown themselves to be good people and have been of service to the country, that to me makes sense too. But instead of like really drilling that down, like even the Dreamers, I've talked about it before, like the Dreamers overwhelmingly, the American public, and I don't mean left or right, I mean the American public overwhelmingly is in support of the Dreamers having some sort of path to citizenship or being naturalized. If you disagree down below in the comments. I'm not going to get mad at you. But overwhelmingly, people are okay with that idea or in support of that idea. And rather than Democrats pushing and saying, okay, if we're going to make immigration such a priority, and this is what's best for us as a country, because if you look at it just statistically or just on paper, it is better for our country that we do enforce our border laws, even if you don't agree with the way that it's currently going down with Trump and the way that ICE is dealing with things. I respect that. If you don't agree with that, I personally do agree with the way that it's going down. I think that's the way it has to happen to make people understand and not want to be here. But if you don't, I get that. But if you look at it on paper, we do have to do something about the situation or the way that the system works, because the system is broken. And so if the Democrats were to say, okay, if we're going to take this seriously, then let's take this seriously, and then really just went at it from a perspective of let's hammer this out and figure out what it is we are going to do, then I could actually respect all the arguing and the bitching that they're doing. But when you just bitch and you really offer no solution other than just leave it alone, just leave it the way it is, that allows people to continue to be exploited. It also allows the criminals to continue to sneak in with the good people. It also allows for us to stay in a repetitive cycle that will never actually resolve in any way, because absolutely nobody, no matter what they tell you, cares to fix it, because everybody's making too much money off of it anyway, and people like the cheap labor. But stay unbothered.